Hi there, we're back. We're going to talk more about voting in Oregon on this personal vlog. This is part 2 of a 3-part series on a personal vlog for October 2020. And most of you know me, but my name is Ed Rutledge. I live in Salem, Oregon, and we have some unique voting procedures here in Oregon. In episode 1 or part 1, I covered just the general way we go about voting in Oregon, which includes mail ballot system. But before we even get the ballots, and this is what I want to cover in part 2 here, before we even get the ballots, we get information. We get what's known as the voter's pamphlet. Here it is. Actually, this is only one section of it. This is covers the local elections as opposed to the statewide elections. And then there is a whole second section which is sizable and, as you can see, kind of thick. Voter's pamphlet comes before your ballot. It's sent to you in the mail because you're a registered voter. This provides you information on how to go about voting in the election, and also gives you information about the candidates and information about the measures. This is another thing that's going to be covered in this part of the blog, is that Oregon is an initiative and referendum state, which means people have a direct vote on certain issues that end up being measures placed on the ballot. And there are 4 this year for statewide ballot measures, and we'll cover those very briefly. Anyway, the voter's pamphlet provides some information. For example, it provides you some critical information about the voting process itself. The voter's pamphlet, for example, will tell you that you can send your ballot, but it will also tell you that there are drop boxes for your county clerk where you can cast your ballot into a secure and locked drop box. So, and they even provide you maps with where to find these drop boxes in your local area. So you provided a lot of information. We also have on this local edition of the voter's pamphlet detailed instructions on how to go about voting, so that before you even get your ballot, you get instructions as to how to go about completing your ballot and voting. And this even includes a very important piece here. And what that piece includes is that the voting instructions for the mail ballot system in Oregon are as the ballots, regardless of how you choose to submit them, either by voting by mail or depositing in a drop box or depositing right at the county clerk's office. They have to be received by the close of the ballot hour on the ballot day. So it's very clear here, and they make it very clear here in the instructions, that postmarks do not count in Oregon. It's when it is received. It has to be received by the close of the voting period by the county clerk. So all of this rigmarole that's been going on across the country as to how long the voting polls are going to be open, whether it's going to be extended for mail ballots, etc., etc. We've long since resolved that in Oregon. We know that it's up to you as a voter to make sure that your ballot is conveyed in such a way so that it will be received by the county clerk at the closing hour on the closing day on election day. We all understand that. If you're mailing your ballot, then you got to do it a little bit earlier. If you don't get it mailed, then you can walk it down to your county clerk. But you have to be there before the closing hour. Okay, that covers some preliminaries in terms of the local voters pamphlet. And I'll next go into the larger statewide voters pamphlet, because that can be a little bit more entertaining. Okay, let's cover the local elections, which is in this smaller voters pamphlet. And because I live in Marion County, I get the pamphlet covers a number of local elections for the various small towns outside of Salem, as well as the city of Salem in which I live. There's only one office open right now for the city of Salem, and that is the mayor's office. The current mayor, Chuck Bennett, is running unopposed, so there's some information about him, but he's going to be the only person that appears on a ballot. The only way to vote for anybody else, of course, would be to write in. But this will cover the various cities and small towns outside of Salem as well as some other local jurisdictions. I notice here that there is a person running for, let's see, what do they call this? The Marion County Soil and Water District for an at-large directorship of the Soil and Water District. So this covers all the local stuff, some of it a little bit esoteric. All right, let's move on to the larger voters pamphlet. This is a statewide voters pamphlet. Obviously also covers congressional districts for the area in which you live. Contains a number of statements on measures, and we'll go through this with, just to kind of give you an idea as to how the voters pamphlet and the statewide voters pamphlet works. For example, for U.S. Senator in our area, we have a rather well-known senator, Jeff Merkley. Does a really decent job, I think, in terms of being a senator, but he's being challenged by somebody in the Pacific Green Progressive Party, a libertarian, and also a Republican. And each one of these people has the ability to post kind of information about themselves. You can see Merkley there, and the other guys, the Republican of interest, did not submit a photo. So candidates for these offices can submit a statement about themselves. There's a limitation in terms of the number of words, etc. Also, what can be said can be challenged by either the Secretary of State who vets these things. Sometimes there are also court challenges from other interested parties before a statement gets put in. Ultimately, the Secretary of State makes a determination. And candidates in particular are given an opportunity to say just about anything they care to say. For example, Gary Dye, who is running for U.S. Senator, let's see if we can get a picture of him here. He's this fellow right here. Gary Dye, running as a libertarian. One of his statements is that you and everyone else will be a slave of the government forever. I'm afraid. I have answers to prevent that. So, see, you can submit almost anything. Other candidates for office include a person who is running for representative in the 5th district. That's this representative. We have a choice between Kurt Schrader, who calls himself a Democrat, but he's really kind of a toady of the NRA, so he's, he doesn't get my vote. And we also have Amy Ryer Corser. And now each of these people can submit their statements, and they also will submit their photographs. And what I'll do is and by the way, they can submit whatever they choose, and there's not a whole lot of vetting for whatever a candidate chooses to post for their statement in the voter's pamphlet. I'll just give you an example. Amy Ryan Corser, who is running as a Republican candidate for U.S. Representative 5th District, posts her official photo is this. And what she really looks like is this. So as you can see, candidates are given the opportunity to make themselves look as good as they possibly can. Moving on, you look for kind of interesting statements by candidates in the voter's pamphlet. Here's a fellow by the name of Jeff Goodman. Must be a good man, right? He's a Republican. He's running for the state treasurer's office. Here his statement is, I spent my entire career in finance for private industry, utilities, and nonprofits. I spent just enough time as a public servant to understand the system without having been corrupted by it. So that's Mr. Goodman's statement. All right, we're going to cover measures. Measures are kind of a unique thing for here in Oregon. Suffice it to say, we are an initiative and referendum state. If enough signatures are gathered by a group of people, an initiative can go to a public vote to create essentially new law. Or sometimes the legislature can refer, that's a referendum, refer an issue to the voters. If the legislature, for example, cares to defer making a decision on their own, they're perplexed or politically boxed in or whatever, they can kick out a referendum. We have 4 this year. I'll cover them briefly. And I'll show you how the voter's pamphlet covers initiatives and referendums. Okay, we're back. As I said, we are an initiative and referendum state. We have 4 statewide measures this year. 2 of them are legislative referendums, and 2 of them are initiatives that were started up by groups of people who gathered enough signatures. So I'll just talk to you about what they are. Measure 107, which was a referendum from the legislature, seeks to control or limit campaign contributions. It's one of those controversial items that even if it passes, I suspect personally that it will be subject to litigation. But nevertheless, it's going to be on the ballot this year, and people will get an opportunity to express their thoughts on limiting campaign contributions. That's Measure 107. Measure 108 would increase cigarette and vaping taxes to pay for certain health care programs. This was another referral by the legislature to be placed on the measure on the ballot as Measure 108. Next, we have an initiative. This was put on the ballot because enough signatures were gathered in the process to place it on the ballot. We have limitations on how many signatures there need to be. The signatures are actually validated by the Secretary of State. Measure 109 is one of the more interesting ones this year. This would allow psilocybin to be used for certain restricted purposes. And we'll cover that in terms of some of the supportive comments that appear in the voter's pamphlet. I should say that Oregon already has quasi-legal marijuana for recreational purposes, no less. It's quasi-legal because the feds still consider it to be illegal, but You can't go more than a couple blocks in any given town without passing now a pot shop here in Oregon. Measure 109 would add psilocybin to the list of available recreational pharmaceuticals here in Oregon. Measure 110 would use taxes on marijuana sales. We have sales, of course, of marijuana with recreational pot shops, and of course we tax them. Measure 110 would allow those taxes to be used for what's referred to as addictive recovery programs. Apparently now, whatever is in the law, there's probably some restriction as to what can be used or how those taxes can be used, and this would expand that. So, even on the measures, now people can submit comments for and against particular measures. You get to place a comment in the voter's pamphlet either by gathering a certain number of signatures or by just simply paying a fee. So a lot of people just pay a fee, and in fact, in some of these measures, you'll see the same person submitting a number of comments because there's a word count limitation. The same person will submit a number of comments. Presumably that person has some backing or paid themselves to get in a number of comments. Probably most of the comments are on our psilocybin bill. And most of the comments, I have to say, are supportive of the psilocybin bill. My favorite argument in favor starts off like this. Thanks to psilocybin therapy, I wake up happy each morning. How's that for a positive statement on psilocybin? After all, the number of positions in favor of this, I can say that the number of people or the number of positions an argument in opposition to this psilocybin referendum is only one opposing argument on this. So I have just a feeling as to what's going to happen on our psilocybin referendum. Myself, I don't like mushrooms, so I don't think I'll be partaking in that. All right, that's the voters' pamphlet information that I've covered and how our initiatives and referendums work here in Oregon. Part 3 of this vlog, I'll actually walk you through my voting process and how I convey my vote to a ballot box, so to speak, at the county clerk's office. Have a good day.